Now to our feature this week. The recent civil war in Yemen began in 2015 between the Abdrabbuh Mansur Hadi-led Yemeni government and the Houthi armed movement, who, along with their supporters and allies, claim to constitute the official government of Yemen. Houthi forces already control the capital Sana'a, and, allied with forces loyal to the former president Ali Abdullah Saleh, have clashed with the forces loyal to Hadi, who are based in Aden. The long-drawn war has brought nothing but hardship on the people and resulted in what is now being referred to as one of the world's worst humanitarian situations. And the global pandemic has reportedly made things even worse. Earlier, I spoke to the UNICEF country representative to Yemen, Ms. Sarah Bensolo Nyanti, about this. Ms. Nyanti has worked with the UN since 2003 and has worked for the UNDP and UNICEF in Nepal, Namibia and Nigeria. Her last appointment was the UNICEF country rep in Gambia before going on to assume the appointment in Yemen. Ms. Sarah Bensolo Nyanti, thank you for joining us. What can you tell us about the present situation in Yemen?
What I can tell you is that Yemen is the world's largest humanitarian crisis. It is a recipient of the world's largest humanitarian operation. It is of a humongous scale in terms of the impact on lives. And we have a war that has over 30 front lines at any given point in time. And the impact it has on children and on women and the population at large is catastrophic.
This suffering and humanitarian situation in the country has been going on since the civil war broke out 5 years ago. Various intervention efforts over the years are yet to have any real impact. What makes the Yemen situation so unique?
What makes the Yemen situation unique is that you have a conflict which has been going on for 5 years. And right now, in the midst of that emergency, where you have had over 12 million children in need, where you've had over 80% of the population requiring humanitarian assistance, you now have coronavirus, where an already dilapidated health infrastructure is now being confronted with increasing cases, with increasing demand for services, and the health structure cannot cope.
Is Yemen capable of stopping this war?
The war in Yemen is the situation we have in Yemen is man-made. So anything that man creates, man can stop. Having said that, we as humanitarians are not involved in the political aspect of the situation in Yemen. We only deal with the consequences. But I think what I would say at this juncture is that we call on all the parties to the conflict to stop the war, because the parties can decide to stop. And if the parties stop, that will ensure that we have better humanitarian access to provide the services that are required to get the life-saving supplies into the country and to be able to reach those people in hard-to-reach areas where they have actually no access to the services that are available across the country. Even in terms of bringing in humanitarian staff and bringing in the needed resources for being able to address the humanitarian crisis in Yemen right now, access remains a problem. And access is a problem because of the conflict. Taking supplies across the land is very difficult. Bringing supplies in by air is also difficult. The seaports, it's also difficult. So access for the people of Yemen is something that is very critical. And in the wake of conflict, it makes it extremely difficult for us to reach those who are in dire need of those services.
A worsening humanitarian situation is prevailing in the country as we speak, coupled now with the coronavirus pandemic. How has the UNICEF adapted its intervention in Yemen to deal with the current challenges?
For UNICEF, we have primarily looked at our response. We've taken a critical look at our response that we have had for an emergency that was already pre-existing. And we've been able to adjust that to make sure that we can respond to COVID as well. And so what we're doing is we're primarily focusing on risk communication and community engagement. Right now, we've reached over 50% of the population with risk communication and making sure that they're aware of how they can prevent themselves from contracting COVID. At the same time, we are critical to preserving the health system, the non-COVID health response. So making sure that the services that were available for maternal and newborn care, the services available for treating malnutrition, all of those services have to be preserved to ensure that those with underlying conditions, such as children who are malnourished, where we have 500,000 children who were already in need of being treated for malnutrition, those children are at risk for COVID. So making sure that the health system is preserved to be able to deal with other health issues beyond COVID, and working hand in hand with WHO and others to make sure that we sort of segment those services and make sure that we protect them and preserve them so that the population can continue to receive services.
And how difficult has it been for UNICEF to operate, given the fact that the civil war in the country does involve the armed forces of several other forces, as this has been shown repeatedly to complicate the establishment of state corridors for UNICEF and for other such agencies to take humanitarian aid through to those who are most affected? For example, the blockade of the port of Aden.
So UNICEF has a presence across Yemen where we have our country office, but we also have 5 sub-offices. And those sub-offices are delegated the responsibility to ensure that they partner with local governance structures to be able to deliver the much needed humanitarian assistance. And those structures have an established network of local partners. And those local partners, including international NGOs, local NGOs, they partner with us to ensure that we deliver the much needed humanitarian assistance. Given the violence in Yemen, UNICEF has had several times negotiated with the authorities, negotiated with all of the parties to the conflict for days of tranquility. We've had days of tranquility for delivering life-saving humanitarian assistance, such as vaccinations. We engage regularly with the parties to the conflict to ensure access to safe drinking water, movement of supplies, and it's constant negotiations. In an active conflict, you continue to have shifting priorities, shifting alliances, shifting, I would say, shifting of the focus in terms of the various parties of the conflict and where they would want to have different services implemented and so forth. And with those shifting priorities on all sides and the needs of the people continuing to rise, it's constant negotiations. It's constantly us trying to make sure that we share whatever information we have around the data, the needs, the people in need, where they are and where we should be acting and negotiating for us to be able to have that access to do that.
This war in Yemen has been a hot topic at many UN Security Council meetings. And according to the UN, the country is said to be extremely vulnerable to COVID-19, but the UN has pulled half of its foreign aid staff out of the country. Is the situation on the ground as hopeless as it sounds?
Well, the recent efforts that we've made in terms of managing our personnel and making sure that we have the ability to deliver on the ground, but also duty of care to our staff, has led us to sort of gauge where we would need to have international staff positioned and where we wouldn't need to have them positioned, and who can telework and who cannot, ensuring that they also have access to their families. And that effort around movement of our personnel was geared at that, ensuring that we stay and deliver, which is primary, but also that our duty of care to our staff ensures that they have access and they can rotate out to see their families and have access to their families as well.
Yemen's healthcare system is said to have collapsed in the face of the health crisis. The UN says Yemen is on the brink of disaster as the pandemic is already worsening what is already the world's worst humanitarian crisis. How can the rest of the world help?
UNICEF and the humanitarian operation in Yemen as a whole has benefited tremendously from the goodwill of the international community. We've benefited from the goodwill of all those who care so much for the people of Yemen. We have been fortunate to have had funding from across, several different types of donors. We have bilateral aid, we have multilateral aid, we have philanthropists, including philanthropists from your part of the world as well. We have philanthropists from all over the world who have been very supportive of the people of Yemen. And I think it's important for people to know that right now in the wake of COVID, we've had such a reduction in the gains we have been making. For example, right now we have 23.4% of those who used to have access to services for children under 5. They've lost access. Already within a few months of COVID, we have about 30% of the children requiring access to treatment for malnutrition. They don't have that access any longer. We also have a situation where safe drinking water, about 43% of the access we had to safe drinking water, it's been lost. So in the wake of COVID, we've lost tremendous gains that were being made in this emergency. And literally COVID is a catastrophe within a catastrophe. I mean, we've moved from a situation where we're responding to the largest emergency in the world to now having an emergency within an emergency. And really being able to address this requires the support of everybody. I think it's also important for people to know that, and I think one of the things that resonated with me in the discussion around engaging with the media in this part of the world was the fact that we have daily 5,000 to 7,000 migrants coming into Yemen every single day. We have had this post-conflict, so this is not something that was existing before the conflict. And the first case of coronavirus announced in Yemen recently was of a Somali migrant. And that has led the migrant population to be more vulnerable, more exposed to violence. And the reality is that people are on the move. With or without COVID, people are on the move. And it's important for us to realize that the situation in Yemen is so dire that the people of Yemen need support, and then migrants passing through there need support. And it's just compound complex. Whether or not we can solve the issues, as it were, we can't solve them without peace. We need peace in Yemen. And I continue to say the children in Yemen deserve peace. They cry for peace. They want peace. But most importantly is their right to have peace. They have a right to live in a society where they can realize their dreams, that the children who want to be doctors can be doctors, and the children who want to be teachers can be teachers. They have a right to pursue those dreams like every other child around the world. The world is faced with COVID right now, but the children in Yemen, they don't have access to online learning. They don't. Of course, you say that, but there are many countries around the world where the children don't have access to online learning. Very well and true. But not all of them have all of the issues that the children of Yemen face. This is a war that is been going on for 5 years. There's no end in sight. We're hoping for peace negotiations to work. By the end of the day, the active front lines right now, as we speak, they're active front lines. In addition to that, you have a collapsing health infrastructure. You have collapsing education system. Everything is collapsing. And then on top of that, they have COVID. And on top of that, they don't know what next. Many children know what next. They know what's next for them. They know that after COVID, they will go back to school. They know that after COVID, this will be their reality. They know that things may change somewhat, but there's some things that they're sure of. The children of Yemen are not sure of anything right now. And they deserve to be sure that they have the right. They deserve to feel comfortable and confident in the fact that they have the right to pursue their dreams, to reach their fullest development potential, and that they don't have. And the world needs to give that to them. It starts with peace.
According to the UN, and you have mentioned this previously, 2 million Yemeni children are acutely malnourished, including nearly 500,000 children under the age of 5 that are suffering from severe acute malnutrition. Has Yemen shown any obligation or responsibility towards these children?
Well, I would say this. We wouldn't be in Yemen if we weren't provided the opportunity to be there. So that's the first thing I would say. We're there. We're being given the opportunity to serve those children. Now, can more be done? Of course, more can always be done. And we're calling on all parties who are stakeholders, who are gatekeepers to these children, to continue to give us the access that we need to be able to deliver the services that they require.
5 years is a pretty long time for a civil war, and women and children are usually the most vulnerable in crisis situations such as this. What is being done to protect and provide for these vulnerable sets of people?
Well, all of the services we provide are targeting children and their families. Right now, UNICEF is providing humanitarian cash. We're providing life-saving cash to over 1.5 million people, reaching almost a third of Yemen's population. Almost 9 million people benefit from the cash transfers that we do across the country. UNICEF has been in the forefront of ensuring that that space is used to continue to advocate for and implement social protection programs, looking at the poorest of the poor. In doing so, we're reaching the more machines, we're reaching slum dwellers with much needed services and making sure that they have referral mechanisms in place to get them the access that they require for those services. UNICEF also ensures that children are safe from preventable diseases and ensuring that we continue to provide them vaccinations and making sure that they have a fighting chance at life. We also work in the area of, like I said earlier, healthcare, where we actually support over half of the primary healthcare facilities across the country, ensuring that they have health workers that provide the incentives, making sure they have the much needed supplies, and making sure that the medicines are available for them to be able to treat families suffering from basic illnesses. We work in the education sector. We work across water, sanitation, and hygiene. All of those spheres in terms of water, sanitation, and hygiene, whether it's access to safe drinking water, whether it's sanitation, making sure that we support water works and making sure the water infrastructure is protected and also strengthened. So UNICEF works in Yemen across all of our core streams. And in addition to that, we respond to emergencies like we're doing now with COVID, and making sure that we work with other UN agencies. We don't do this alone. We work with other UN agencies. We work with international NGOs and local NGOs. And together, as a humanitarian operation, we continue to intervene in these areas.
What has also been the response to UNICEF's target of a $535 million emergency fund for children affected by the conflict in Yemen?
Our humanitarian appeal, as you rightly stated, is a little over 530 million, and our COVID appeal is about 50 million. And we do see that there are donors who are interested in funding us, but we're way underfunded, and we remain underfunded. And it's something we continue to advocate for, because the children of Yemen can speak for themselves. The children of Yemen can't advocate for themselves, and we're the voice of those voiceless children. And just asking the donor community and the well-wishers and all of those who have the heart for children, for the children who are most vulnerable, just asking you to reach out and support UNICEF's work in Yemen and support the children of Yemen, as it were. And unless Yemen has peace, ultimately, even the finances, right, will continue to be required. So ultimately, it's the finances along with the advocacy for peace as well. And we do need all of the resources that we can get right now to save these lives, the lives of the children who deserve to reach their fullest development potential.
What has been the world's response to that target?
The world is responding, and the world continues to respond. And we have a donor conference coming up on June 2nd, where we hope to have even more galvanized efforts at ensuring that the humanitarian needs in Yemen for all of the actors in Yemen, like not only UNICEF, but all of the actors who are implementing core programs required to save lives. We hope that the June 2nd conference will be a time where those who have been traditional partners of UNICEF and the UN at large, those who have been, one-time givers, those who have been philanthropists looking to invest in saving lives, that they'll come forth on June 2nd at the Riyadh conference and provide the much-needed services through their funding. Because they don't provide the funding, we can't deliver the services, and the services are required for those children's lives to be saved.
Ms. Sarah Besolo Nyati, thank you again for speaking with us, and we do wish you all of the best, and our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Yemen at this time.
Thank you so much, Amarachi, for having me.